Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. This is Jodi.
And I'm Eliot.
And we have a lot of really cool stuff to talk about today.
We do, not the least of which is that this is our 10th episode.
Wow. I want like some sort of like streamer sound effect, like, I don't know.
We should have been prepared with a sound drop. But
yay!
But before we do that, I really want to give a shout out, as we always do, to our founding patrons. Tom Loveland of Mind Over Machines, the architecture firm of GWWO, and Cat's Copy. We really appreciate them. They're our founding sponsors.
And we have two new sponsors, new patrons to announce today who have logged onto our patreon.com site and pledged their support to the podcast. We have Kathy Vogelsang with Herbert and Ethel Inc. And we also have Mary Craft Staffing and HR Solutions. And even, as excited as I am to have them as a supporting patron, do we have a second for me to tell you a really cool story?
A mini story.
It's a mini story. I want to mash that into like a mini story. It doesn't work. Okay. Anyway, it's a mini story. So we heard from Lisa Benson, who is the CEO of Mary Craft Staffing and HR Solutions. And she wrote in as she was signing up to be a patron to let us know that she had actually used episode, I believe it was 4, the episode about the couples massage, with her entire staff during their quarterly meeting because she thought it was really useful and helpful.
And I have to say, when you first told me that, I was so charged up about that because I have to say, I can't think of any message I'd rather hear from one of our listeners that they saw the value in it so much so that they distributed it to their staff. That
it's worth their time. I just value the time so much that she would use it with their staff. So thank you. That was our best compliment yet, I think.
It absolutely was. But wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more. And it's not Ginsu knives. But in addition to it being our 10th episode, which was very exciting to hit that milestone, we also just past having our 1,000th listener, which for the record is really hard to say. 1,000th listener.
That's why I asked Jodi to say it.
You throw me all the hard ones.
Yes, I did.
The 1,000th listener, which as close as we can tell from our statistics, I believe it was Chris Morosco, who is with Howard Bank. So thank you, Chris, for being our 1,000th click.
So here's my story. As you know, Nikki and I just celebrated our 19th wedding anniversary. Mm-hmm. And we started talking about, well, what are we going to do for our 20th? Because 20th seems more significant. And just by way
Let's blow right through this one.
This one was like gravel
like
or graphite or something like that. But so for the 20th, we were talking about going to Hawaii. And the reason is that we had eloped to Hawaii. And when we were in Hawaii for our wedding, we actually said that, you know what, let's come back. If we're lucky enough to have kids, let's come back with our kids for our 10th. And we did. Oh. And we had a wonderful time. And so Nikki said, hey, why don't we go back to Hawaii for our 20th? That would be cool. We'll take the kids and
I thought you were going to say, but without the kids.
No, we love having the kids. So we'll take the kids. And so I was like, okay. So because we wanted to do some different things, I thought I would call a travel agent, and I thought that I would have some ideas and something we could talk about when we went out for dinner for our 19th, just kind of planning the 20th. Assuming she wants to sign on for another year, which...
Assumes she wants to renew her lease.
Yes, if she
doesn't want her security
lease.
deposit back.
So I don't normally work with a travel agent. So I Googled travel agents Hunt Valley. And I found this travel agent, and I want to get the name right. It's World Travel Service, right? Okay.
And I guess depending on whether the story goes good or bad, either I would have to wonder if they're a sponsor or if they're going to... I'm just kidding.
Yes. No, they're not a patron.
Not a patron.
Unlikely to be. So I called up World Travel Service, and the receptionist answered the phone, and I said, hey, I'd like to speak to somebody about planning a Hawaii vacation for next year. And she says, her first question was, well, are you interested in tours, accommodations, flights? And I said, well, at this point, because I'm a year out, I just want to talk to somebody about what your experience is and what some options are, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. And she said, well, there's a $50 fee for planning.
Like consultation or?
Yes, okay. Like a consultation fee. And I was kind of taken aback, but I said, okay, I understand that. But at this point, I just want to talk to one of your travel agents to see what the experience is and just really see if we want to move forward. If we move forward, obviously, we'll pay whatever fees are applicable.
And just to be clear, you weren't looking to like get all their good ideas, and like you just wanted to get a feel for like, is a travel agent what I need and want? Right?
Yes, is a travel agent what I need and want? Or somebody say, well, there are a lot of options. There are, for example, one of the things that I was wondering is, are there inter-island cruises, or is it just like a cruise from San Diego to Hawaii or something?
Right,
so
right.
I just wanted to know we have these adventure things, or we have these, hiking things, or we have these cruise, whatever it was. So she says, well, please hold. Says, okay. So I hold for a little while. She comes back on the phone and she says, yeah, no, any kind of research takes a $50 fee. So you have to agree to a $50 fee. Do you want to go forward? And I said, no, I don't want to go forward because
you actually weren't requesting research, right?
I was requesting nothing more than somebody to get on the phone and say, well, we've done this with people in the past. We've done other things. And so I could get a comfort level with them, say, oh, this person really knows what she's talking about. I absolutely do want to set up a meeting and we can come in and talk. It was really just I was looking for a 5 at most 10-minute get to know you session with somebody I thought seemed nice and competent and got what I was trying to do. And then I'd get in my car and go there and we'd talk about it. And so I said, no, I don't want to proceed because I called in. It seems to me that I was probably close to your ideal customer or your ideal call. I called in from the internet with the prospect of spending, I don't know, all told $10,000 plus on this vacation. And I just wanted 5 minutes with somebody who you thought was your Hawaii specialist or somebody who does this all the time. And your first reaction was a take. Okay, I'm not going to see if I can establish a relationship for this $10,000 account, which might be more because if we like you, then in the future we'll have other things, because I want to nail down this $50 first.
So that's okay. Wow. So I have such a different perspective on this.
Okay, go ahead.
Equally as sad and frustrated and just feeling how unfortunate it is. I don't think that what's happening here is ooh, we could get $50. I think that in these moments, it's like the battle of the fears. And fears is a bit too strong of a word because this is not a scary situation, but I don't know what other word to use. So you use the word comfort level. You were like testing the waters. You weren't going to, you said, I don't usually use travel agents.
Right.
If I fill in a bunch of blanks, you're not even sure you want or need a travel agent. Is it worth the money? Like there's a lot of sort of like dipping your toe in the water sensation, right? For you of like,
absolutely.
I just want to know if this is a thing I need. So you need to get a taste. I guarantee you that travel agents are one of those industries that are a bit like PTSD in the world right now because of the internet, who have been cannibalized and scavenged down to the bone because their value is not recognized. So like real estate agents, travel agents, doctors, frankly. I mean, you and I just had a conversation about like all the medical research I did yesterday.
Right,
like,
WebMD,
I know,
absolutely.
exactly. Yeah. So travel agents feel like their value is on such thin ice, and they have made moves in what seems to be a way to protect themselves, to put a boundary up of like, okay, if somebody wants to pick our brains, because I bet you what has happened in the past is people call in, they used to give a half an hour, 45 minutes for free. They'd chat, they'd tell you about, oh, you could do this, you could do this, you could do that. The person's writing it all down, walks out the door, goes and schedules it for themselves, and they never see a dime. Like that's, I could make up that that's what they're trying to protect themselves from.
And I get that. They want skin in the game. They want me to have some skin in the game so that I've put the $50, there's some sort of commitment there.
Again, it's so funny. I don't know why this seems different to me, but I don't even think of it as skin in the game. I think, I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, skin in the game. There are so many times, I think we've even mentioned this on a previous episode, when it came up about companies who put policies in place instead of just having a conversation. Yes. So like one guy's abusing the vacation policy. So we do an entire manual that, you know, instead of just talking to Ted about, hey, you're abusing the vacation policy. It's almost like that where this kind of situation could be handled simply by having good boundaries as a travel agent. Like, I'm not going to tell him everything. I'm not going to, you could handle it in the conversation of, I'm not going to give away everything. If he wants our expertise, he needs to pay for it. But recognizing that in between your fear of, I don't know if this is for me, and their fear of, he's going to ask me a bunch of questions, take everything that's a value of ours and walk away and do it himself and never pay us. And there's this like DMZ, this like demilitarized zone between you that with the two ways that worked out, because the $50 then puts up this like barbed wire fence that you have to be willing to cross to make the two things come together.
And you said that there's a battle of fears, and you're right. Each side in this discussion has certain needs. And
they're trying to protect themselves from something. They're trying to get some need met.
Right. We're trying to get some need met. But the issue that it comes down to for me, when you're addressing your needs, and one of your needs, presumably as a business, is to get clients, to get customers. So I think that what they did, what the travel agency did, was first prioritize their need above the needs of a new client, or not even prioritize, but value their need to the exclusion of the needs of the new client. And I think that in so doing, they established the first step in a possible relationship as a taking, which is so against what I'm accustomed to and what I think would lure me in. I mean, there are other examples. So for example, if you go online to BaltimoreSun.com, you can read the article. You see the headlines and a headline interested you. So you go there, you can read the whole article. Now they might have a box that pops up that says, hey, you get 4 articles for free this month. After that, for a low price, you can subscribe to us. But their business model is a give first. We'll give you something you're interested in. And then if you see value in what we've provided, then hopefully you'll pay for it.
That is the perfect, that was a much clearer way of saying what I was trying to say a minute ago, is I think sometimes, and this certainly happens in personal relationships and certainly happens in like leadership, supervisory of people ways, where people are either they don't know where to draw that line. They're afraid if they start it all, there's a fear that if you give it all, that you are then in this like slippery slope down into giving everything. And it's either a not knowing where to draw the line, not knowing how to draw the line. It's a little bit clearer with articles on the internet, because you can have this other conversation about, oh, let's draw the line at 4 or let's draw the line at 12. And you can set up the technology and it does it for you. Whereas a travel agent on the phone has to figure that out on the phone with you in the moment of like, when am I giving too much? When am I going to regret it later because I gave too much and that person went off and did their own thing? It's just a little bit murkier, but it's still, I totally agree with you in the, that there has to be that, and I don't even think of it as a give and take, although they're exactly the same thing. But I think the part that they're missing, and when companies do things like that, is they're missing thinking about the emotional experience of the other person, in this place, the client, and what they need to feel at ease in order to be able to make a buying decision. So it's they're into the like the give and take, the protection before they've even sort of soothed the concern. I mean, in any situation, a client approaching you has sort of trepidations about like, is this the right thing? Do I want to do this? Meeting them in that place with some compassion and empathy about that experience is like the best way to do sales. And but you do have to be careful to not, especially with certain industries. Mine is one of them, actually. All I do is talk to people. So the amount in which I talk to somebody in the sales process, I have swung too far on both sides of that when I was figuring it out when I was first starting. Like, what's too much? What's not enough? How do you do that? But they put up this protective barrier. And this is something I think about a lot, where it seemed like a good idea, right? They're like,
on paper, in the conference room, yes.
Yeah, in the moment, because it feels like it's protecting you from something. And yet, and this is a fascination of mine, there are so many examples where the thing that you decide to put in place to protect you from something is actually the thing that puts you on like the fast track Autobahn to that thing you're trying to avoid. So let's put this $50 in place so that somebody doesn't and this is the part that they're seeing, pick our brain and then go away and not become a client. So it seems like, what they're trying to avoid is losing a client.
Right.
So they put this $50 thing in place and they lose a client before even talking to them. Faster.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. And so one example, and we may have talked about this, is Nordstrom's. So John Nordstrom was once interviewed about the fact that, back up. If you go into a store like Nordstrom's, a lot of times you'll see a sign near the dressing rooms that say customers shouldn't take more than 3 articles of clothing into a dressing room, et cetera, et cetera. But Nordstrom's, you'll never see that.
Thank God.
And so he was interviewed about this, and he was specifically asked, why doesn't Nordstrom limit what you bring into the dressing rooms? And his response was something akin to the fact that, look, in retail, there's a certain percentage of loss. Whatever that is, there's a certain percentage. You can't get it to zero. There's always a certain percentage of loss. So you know that, I'm going to make up the statistics, 0.5% of customers will steal from you. You know that 0.5% of customers will steal from you. But what that means is that 99.5% of the customers are honest and they're actually trying to make a buying decision. So why would I put up a sign designed to inconvenience 99.5% of my customers just for a shot, which would prove to be futile, by the way, of catching or placing a hurdle in front of the 0.5% that will steal?
Right.
And so to your point on this $50, yes, they did figure out in the solace of their conference room, they did figure out a policy that may protect them from the people that will pick their brain and then go to Travelocity or go to one of the online services. And at the same time, that protection acts as a barrier against customers who act like me, who actually would use them. I mean, you mentioned...
Well, maybe. I mean, to be fair, we don't know. You may have had that conversation, gone, okay, actually, I think I could do this on my own. And you wouldn't even have known that that's what happened. And they would have been like, wah, wah, wah. It happened again.
Fair enough. No, I shouldn't have said who actually would use it. I said who had an honest possibility of using them.
So pause right there, because that is a super important... Because I'll flip this whole conversation on its head for a second and give you an example of the other way around. So I think there are plenty of industries where them offering the free thing first is equally as problematic. And I'll give you a couple examples, but to me, it's not the charge or don't charge. I really don't want this to be a black and white. It comes back to something that's nuanced and takes some paying attention to understand the emotional and psychological landscape of where your potential client is in the moment that they call you for your particular kind of business, and understanding what would smooth the road between them and saying yes. And so here's an interesting thing. There are a lot of house services. So whether it's
you mean real estate, that sort of thing, or
home improvement services.
Okay. All right.
So whether it's carpet cleaning or mold detection or whatever, there's lots of things that offer like free consultations. I don't do free consultations because I just know that if they come out and check something and they give me this report, now I have this weird, awkward, you're slightly beholden to them because they came out and did something free and you know they're going to try and wind you into something. It just feels icky. Whereas there are, and it's a good thing we don't transcribe these because I have no idea how someone would spell icky.
That's the producer's problem. As I say, that's the sweet, sweet sound of somebody else's problem.
That's the sweet sound. But there have been times where I have wanted something. Actually, mold. There was a period of time where I was worried we might have a leak in the wall at our old house, and we had fixed it, but I was worried that we had mold, and I wanted someone to come out and do a test, and do like a sweep or whatever. And they're like, well, we come out and we do this free analysis. I was like, no. I would rather pay you $100, $500, whatever it is, have you come out and do like an analysis and give me that. And then I'll decide. There's just a understanding what makes it easier to say yes and what makes it harder to say yes, and knowing that it's different in different situations.
Well, let me just ask this, because for a free report in that situation where you're worried about it being clickbait, like, we found 8 things and you won't believe what we found in room number 3.
Not quite that. I don't like the, Part of it comes back to entrepreneurial karma for me. Like, I want to pay people for the value that they give. And either the report that you give me has value, and therefore I want to pay you for it. But I want it to have its own insular, distinct value. And then I get to decide whether I do something or not. If you come out and give me, if it's part of your sales process and I know that you're just teeing me up, this doesn't make sense because you're the same human doing the same work for me. But I also, whether I like it or not, I trust it less because I know that you are, if it's part of your sales, not that you couldn't do this if I'm paying you the 200 or 500, whatever. I mean, I rationally, I know this doesn't make sense, but psychologically, which is what matters when it comes to buyers,
absolutely,
it feels more clean to me to pay for something in the beginning and then know it is independent. And
no, I agree with that. And, you can walk away without guilt also because you know that they gave you value, but you gave them value in the form of payment.
Yes.
And so I agree with that. And I think it's an incredibly important distinction. Is this part of the sales process or is this part of the service process?
And that's where I think with the travel agents, they don't know where to draw the line. And they're afraid if they start with you that they don't know how or when to stop it. And then they would have given you the value that's the other end.
And that's what I think it's a false concern because you had said in your industry, when you do coaching, when you work with organizations, when you do facilitations, I would suspect that prospective clients of yours have to feel that they have to gain a comfort level
absolutely
with you before they say, okay, we're going to dive in because they're asking you to do something important. You're not an impulse buy. You're not candy at the checkout aisle. I mean, in order to do your job right, you've got to actually... There's
like a stripper name joke in there or something, but I don't know. I tried to let it pass, but I couldn't.
Candy with an I. So, but in order to do your job right, you've got to actually get into the heart, and sometimes it's the dirty stuff of what's bothering them or the messy things about their business. And it's completely fair for them to want to sit down with you and gain a comfort level. And you bear the risk. You've decided to bear the risk, I would presume, of somebody coming in, spending time with you and them saying, yeah, I don't get it, or you're not the right person.
Here's exactly where that line is, because I never even toyed with the idea, and I can tell you it because I knew it wouldn't work, and it also just didn't feel right of sort of what you were irked about this, like, oh, you're interested? Well, write me a check for X amount of dollars, right, and then I'll talk to you.
Right, exactly.
Of course not. People have to get a feel for me. So that never really occurred to me, but you're right. That's on one end of the perspective. It was not. The other end of it, though, I did a lot, and it was a slightly different thing. It's not that I think they'd get to the other end and be like, it doesn't really help. I ran a very different risk, which is very specific, I think. Well, it's not just specific to my industry, but here's the risk I ran. And I did it over and over and over again until I realized this. In my effort to let them or to help them see, like, here's how I can be helpful. Mm-hmm. I would go, because I have no problems just giving and give like that. That's how my business works, is I just talk to people. And if I'm helpful, great. That's I'm fine with that. I don't feel that worry that like, oh my gosh, I'm going to give too much away. But here's what did happen a lot. And then I learned I had to find some sort of middle ground, especially in the work that I end up doing with people. They would come in feeling a certain, whatever word you would put on it, angst, like spinning their wheels, some sort of like, kind of like things aren't working quite right.
Okay, so let me just stop you there, because you had said, and it was very important, and I wrote it down, you have to figure out the emotional state of somebody who's contacting you.
Yes.
So you knew
or the generalized version. The
generalized version, what they need. And so I just think it's important at that point that that's what you had determined people were feeling.
Yeah, well, and it's a little bit different with each person. I feel it the minute I start talking to them.
Right.
Here's where I would get into a risk of just full out doing the whole song and dance of a process with them. If I actually not solved, but if I took them all the way to really feeling better about that individual thing, I actually was doing them a bit of a disservice, because in that moment they would feel like, oh, okay, great. thank you so much. That was fantastic. And they felt better.
So you treated a symptom.
I treated a symptom. And in that moment, they felt better. And then you're right. So they would often go away and not become a client. That part was my issue. And as long as I was trying to solve it from my issue, I might be, which goes back to your original story, I might be tempted to institute a $50 to talk to me in the first place.
Right.
The part that I was able to connect to, because I stayed focused on where is their emotional experience, is what I cheated them out of by letting them feel like that was good enough and that they felt better. It's like if somebody has a broken ankle and you give them several Motrin and it doesn't hurt anymore. So they're like, oh, this is great. And they go walk out the door. And so I had to find this like Goldilocks in between zone where people could get a sense of what it's like to work with me. They could get a sense of how I could be valuable and helpful, but it didn't take it all the way that it relieved all the pressure of that just individual moment. So, and I don't even know how to explain the
important part of that though, is that what I heard you say is not, well, I need to find the Goldilocks, the just right part, because if I give them too much, they wouldn't pay me. What you were saying was still of service to them.
Yes.
If I give them too much, they would have a false sense of resolution.
Yep. No, it is. You're right. And so I do agree with you. It goes back to staying, but that's why I called it the battle of the fears. Because when you put anytime fears are in the front, if you're letting the fears choose for how you go about things, I don't think it ever steers you right. Whereas like you don't step over I didn't want to lose a client. It's not like I'm so like zen,
I don't care.
I'm like that, just sweet and lovely in the world. No, I wanted clients. I needed clients. But the perspective of like, oh my God, they're going to steal from me. They're going to take my time. They're going to every time I let that be how I decide, it doesn't work. Whereas if I just try and stay focused on what they're needing. And there was this amazing article. I not surprisingly, I can't remember what it's called or where it was. I think it might have been Harvard Business Review, but I'm making a note of it to find it.
The miracle of show notes.
It will be in the show notes. It was this fascinating article, and I think we might have even mentioned it once before, but it was this article about mapping out the emotional experience of your client and so that all the way through your process. Oh, we did talk about this. We did one time because you said there's this gap sometimes where right after you do like the first little bit, there's this sort of like waiting period where the client might think that there's nothing going on. And so you can, once you map that out and know like, oh, they might wonder what's happening here, you can get in front of it and say like, okay, we're going to do this big burst of activity. And then there's going to be this gap where it's going to feel like nothing's happening, but that's normal. And so you pre-calm their anxieties. I think the same happens in sales, and the whole client relationship thing is to notice there's always an anxiety with sales. Like people are afraid they're going to get sucked into, when I used to do trade shows, when I was at the architecture firm, we used to joke in almost like a Jane Goodall watching the chimps kind of way that there were 4 or 5 sort of personality types at trade shows. They're like the breeze through people who just come by and like grab the swag. They aren't interested in what you're doing at all. They're just there for the swag. And, you just let those people go. Then there are some people who would stand across the aisle. We had this like slideshow revolving of a bunch of our architectural projects. They would stand across the aisle and watch the show and read as if they were like, they didn't want to get into a conversation.
No.
And if they got too close, we might reel them in.
Right.
Like, so they would stand over there and they would stand there for like 20 minutes and watch the whole slideshow. So they were clearly interested, but they were safely protected by the barrier of the hallway, not hallway, but whatever it is, the walkway. And, there were, that is true. Like, I hate it when I walk into a store and, they're paid by commission because they're like, hi, can we help you find something? And I always, even if there's something exact that I'm looking for, I'm like, just looking.
Right.
Just
exactly.
looking.
That's all you
I'm just looking. I'm just here for fun. Leave me alone. That is, if you can't find the empathy for your clients in that place and know what they're worried about, what they're afraid of, which frankly might be you. Like they might be afraid they're going to get locked in before they know what they want. I think you're missing a huge opportunity.
And so I think those are, as we wrap up, I think those are the 2 parts of it. One is the empathy, understanding what your client needs, where they are emotionally when they approach you, what their expectations, what will soothe their anxieties, and get them to a point where they believe that interacting with you puts them on the right path. But the other part is I think there's an understanding of the value you bring. So in my industry, as a lawyer, I can't have somebody call on the phone and say, hey, I just wanted to kick something around with you, and say, okay, you need to write a large check before I will deign to spend time with you. We always spend a lot of time. And the risk is that I can go over and say, well, what you really need is a partnership agreement that says, that covers these topics. And they're like, great, thanks for your time. I'm just going to type in LegalZoom, and then I'm going to get this form. So I've got to have enough confidence to know that when I spend time with people, they're going to realize, you know what? Maybe this boilerplate pre-printed thing doesn't address all my needs. And I need somebody who actually talks to me and understands my business. And if I don't convey that to them in an hour free consultation or whatever it's going to take, then shame on me.
Yeah, I actually even take it a step further, probably, that I just trust that, because here's the bottom line. I only want to work with people who really want to work with me.
Right, exactly.
It's not, when I have done a really good job of, I'm making air quotes, selling someone and convincing them that they should, it never works out well. And I never get to stop having to work that hard to convince them that I'm worth it. And frankly, that's not very fun. No,
it's self-filtering.
It is. So either it is obvious. So I would imagine that had you spoken with that person and not had to pay the $50, either their knowledge would have said oh, this is so great. You know so much. Yeah. You know so much more than I will ever. I don't want to have to Google 20 things and read. It would take me hours to know what you already know. Right. I will happily write you a giant check. But you just had to get a set, because you might have talked to them and they were like, Hawaii, is that the isle? Is
That's
that
still
the
part
one?
of the US or no?
Right. And then you'd be like, okay, thank you very much. So I think it's trusting your value, and not just, I think there's a slightly unattached version of it, trusting that you will be able to draw the line so that you're not stuck in some conversation that you can't stop, that you can draw the line where you're not going to keep talking to that person about their agreement and right there, type it up for them and give, where the line is of okay, this is enough. Trust that you can draw that line, and then trust that if they don't get it, that's okay. And they'll move on, and trust that the people who do get it are worth it.
Right. And so all of that, the conveyance of value, the empathy for understanding where your client is and at the time of approach, the determination of whether it's a fit, all of that are things that you protect yourself against by putting up that $50 barrier in my story. You never get a chance to do any of that and find out if your ideal client didn't just walk away because you decided to address your own fear instead of theirs.
Mm-hmm. Well, one last note on this, because this was pretty huge for me. I was taking a sales course kind of thing one time, and the lady said, if you struggle with sales in your own business, touch in with where you are skittish as a buyer, where you don't know how to draw the boundaries. And for me at the time, it was that whole free thing, or walking into the store. This is what's funny about it. Here I am talking about trust that you can set boundaries. I absolutely am the person who, when I walk into a store and the lady says, "Can I help you find something?" I go, "No, I don't need nothing." I literally just said the opposite of the advice I was trying to give, because for me, I don't like being in that kind of situation, because I feel like once they start showing me things, I'll have no way to get out and I'll have to make up something, and because I don't trust that boundary with myself there. I don't trust myself to say, that's enough. I don't like these things. I'm leaving. No, but that feels awkward.
But they also approached you. Part of it for me in that same situation is they're jumping on me, not out of a genuine desire to help me. They're jumping on me because they're commission based, and it's still part of the sales process, not part of the service process.
That's true, but that's not the point I'm making right now. So
Fair enough.
Just shut up. No, not shut
up. Not the first time I've been told that today.
Totally fine. But I think it's interesting to notice where you don't trust your boundaries as a buyer, to notice if you're tempted to overly protect and wall off that part of the sales process as an entrepreneur or a leader, because there's a good chance that they're kind of matched up. It was just interesting for me to notice, because it balanced out the equation a little in my own experience. So
fair enough. So that's our story.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so grateful for everyone who's listening in, and we're especially grateful to all of our patrons who've joined us over at patreon.com to support our efforts here. And we hope to see you next week.
And listen, having told our story, we'd love to hear yours.
Ooh, yeah.
So I guess what we're trying to say is the floor is yours. Go to sohere'smystory.com and join the conversation.
Wait, before you go, there are 3 things that we really want you to know.
First, you can find show notes and links to all of the random things we happen to mention during the episode by visiting our website, sohere'smystory.com.
The second thing is we like to talk.
And not just to each other.
That's right. So what we really want to hear is your story. So while you're there, you'll also find links to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and other ways to contact us with questions, suggestions, or even to share your own story.
And if you love the show and want to support future episodes, you'll also find the link to our Patreon page where we share our extra bonus content.
Or if you can't support us financially, it'd be great if you could leave us a 5-star review at iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcast service you use to listen to us. And be sure to tell all your friends.
Until next time.